And this show is brought to you by the Beaches of South Walton. Find out more about this travel destination at www.beachesofsouthwalton.com.
Hi there, we're here with Carl Helrich of Allegro Vineyards in York County, Pennsylvania. Who would have thought it? But here we stand in front of a nice-looking vineyard of seemingly old vines. Carl, welcome to Grape Radio, and what can you tell us about what we're seeing here?
Well, thank you very much for having me here on your show. I'll tell you, first off, we're standing right now between two of our vineyards. We have our Chardonnay vineyard on my right, and on our left we have our Cabernet vineyard. What we find is unique about this, especially here on the East Coast, is that they are vinifera plantings that we've planted back in 1973. So the vineyard is now 34 years old, making it one of the oldest vineyards on the East Coast for those two varieties. There is still a little snow in the ground, yes. We got hit by a snowstorm end of last week, and I think we got around 6 inches, and 2 days ago this was still entirely white, and I was out here in my snow boots pruning. We've had freezes, and freezing rain in late March here before, but we've actually never lost anything to frost. Okay, the vine we're going to look at here on this side is kind of an extreme case of East Coast viticulture over 30 years. This is a kind of paranormal vine almost. This is what you don't want to have happen in a vineyard. If I'd been a grape grower, I would have pulled this vine out because it kind of disrupts things. But now I like to keep it as kind of a showcase vine to say, this is what happens if you kind of let the vineyard do what it wants to do. First off, the vine starts way over here, and you can see there's a big hole right there. That's where one trunk used to be, right here. And it's died off since then. Now, as you follow the vine up, you actually end up having this is actually split in two, and I don't know if this is the live half or this one is. I think this is the live half of this vine, but you can actually put your fingers and touch fingers in between these vines. As you follow this through, what's happened is, if you look through here, this is just like in that other vine I was talking about. You've got spurs here that have died out. This is an old spur that used to produce canes like this. This is an old spur. Here's another spur. What happens over winter is you get the frost will come, the heavy freezes will come, and you just lose this thing. So if you're trying to make a nice, even, balanced canopy, you can't, because all of a sudden you lose the thing that's going to give you your canes that year. And so you have to develop another one, and another one, and another one, and eventually this thing grows way out of control. And so what Tim did before, the last 20 years, is he just kept extending this guy. And this is actually now the head of the vine. So if you actually straighten this vine out, he would stand about 7 or 8 feet tall. Because that's how long the trunk is. And now the arm extends that way and then extends this way. And you can see here's an old spur here, and with the new one next to it. And actually, here's a really good example. This is what happens. See, this is the spur that I left last year. I left this one thinking it was going to throw some canes out and we're going to get some fruit off this. Lo and behold, it didn't. It just died out, and it's still got a little bit of something to it, but it's a dead spur. And that just happens over time with us here in older vineyards. This is just really not a recommended way, at least in my opinion, of pruning your vines. I mean, this vine probably put out 6 to 8 pounds of grapes this year, so it's still, now it's taking up the room of, 3 or 4 grapevines, but at least it's still productive, and it's just interesting to look at and see kind of a whole story of something, in one vine. Now, if you take a look around what I've been trying to do now, this is what I consider a rehabilitation that really went well on this old vine. This vine was planted in 1973, as you can see evidenced by the trunk, the size of the trunk. This is a Cabernet vine at this time. And you can see here that there was a cordon here. And cordon is an arm that usually extends along the length of the wire, from which you get spurs, which look like little thumbs, and out of which the canes every year come out. What I've done is I've actually cut this off last year, and I'm trying to do a new kind of training called cane pruning. Cane is where you take a cane from this last year and lay that down instead of having an actual cordon there. But what we do here is we lay out these 2 canes, one on either side. Then we have what are called renewal spurs. It looks like I left even 3 on this one for some reason. And these are renewal spurs, so in case something happens here, next year I've got this one, and hopefully I'll get a cane coming out of this one here, and maybe a cane coming out of this bud right here that will give me options for pruning next year. So maybe this cane that grows up like this, I'll end up laying down this way and be the one for next year. The reason why we don't want cordons is because you can see here, this is an old spur that didn't work out. On the back side here, there's another spur that didn't work out. And basically what you can see, these just crumble away. What happens is over time, because of the hard winters, we lose the fruitfulness of each one of these spurs, and we can't get any kind of canes to come out. if we actually use canes every year, we're able to get good, even fruit development with no blind spots due to dead spurs.
Older vines, people say, well, with the older the vine, you get more complexity. And other people say, well, it's BS. There's no correlation between how old it is. Why would it be more complex? So maybe you can give me your spin of this.
Well, I'm going to be biased, of course, because I happen to have an old vineyard here.
Well, okay,
Well, I will say that older vines yield less for the most part. And when you yield less, you concentrate flavors better. I mean, if a vine, in my opinion, has a certain optimum amount of tonnage, a vineyard that it can carry, and also has a certain limited amount of flavor it can contribute. And if you stretch that flavor across too many pounds, you dilute that flavor. So I think there might be that kind of correlation. If you could zoom in on our label up here. The story goes back in the early 80s, of course, Rothschild and Mondavi were, of course, trying to make this Napa Médoc wine, and they put together this huge marketing engine. They spent millions of dollars on this thing, and they decided they were going to call this thing Opus One. It's about in 1982 or 83, I think they announced this, and then Spectator, I think, was like the place that broke the story. And John Crouch over here in Brogue, Pennsylvania, kind of raised his hand up and wrote a letter to Jim Laube saying, excuse me, Jim, we've got a wine called Opus One over here. And what my understanding of the story, according to John, is that Mondavi sent his fleet of lawyers out here and eventually ended up purchasing the name and the rights to use the name in Pennsylvania from Allegro.
Wow.
Yeah. The funny thing is it's not a cab-based wine. This is a wine that's a blend of Seyval Blanc grapes and peach wine. This may not be impressive by Bordeaux Chateau standards or maybe even nice old California standards, but I can show you the library of wines that we keep here. By East Coast standards, it's I think pretty impressive. And I'll turn the light on to cast light on all the microflora we have. Our humidity right now is probably around 70% back here. And as evidenced by the molds and stuff growing on the walls, and our cardboard boxes tend to fall apart a lot back here.
Yeah, I bet.
And just so you know, these bottles were all cleaned off about 3 years ago when I labeled them. So this is only 3 years worth of growth on this stuff. So this is unique, I think, for East Coast wineries, is that we have wines that not only did John have the foresight to save a quantity of, but we can actually pull some of these out and you can try them and you can understand why we saved them. Here's one of the original 1980 cabs. This is one of the wines that put him on the map and made him realize that, I'm not going to make good Riesling here in Brogue.
How long will you keep that? I mean, is it like some more sentimental value or?
No, actually, the 1980 is a wonder. I had a wine a year and a half ago, and it was really nice.
Come on, that wine can't show up very good now.
Okay, we'll find out. I've pulled up.
Well, that was my trick to get you. To
Yeah,
say
no,
that.
we won't try. I've got another one pulled out that we'll try out front.
Carl, we can't thank you enough for your time. It was a fabulous tour of the vineyard, the winery, and a great tasting of your wines. You're doing a great job here.
Great.
Wish you all the best of luck.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming out. I've really enjoyed talking to you guys about everything here.